Hi, everyone, and welcome to another Q&A office hour and strategy call. I am just connecting our live video for our Facebook group. So if you can just be patient with me for a minute, we're going to get that rolling. In the meantime, if you are joining us on, not Facebook, if you're joining us on LinkedIn or YouTube, I would love for you to drop in where you're joining us from, first of all, and then also what is your niche? If you could share with us what your niche is, that would be great, because it will help inform us as we work through the stages of change model today and some behavior change strategies. We are going to be covering not only strategies, but we're going to give you tools as well. Okay, so we are connecting. Hold on. Let's see here. Okay, let's see if we got our, here we go. Just want to make sure that Facebook always gives us a little bit of trouble. And now I tested this before and there we go. Okay. All right, here we go. Hold on one second. Oh boy, we're having trouble again. I am so sorry that this is happening again. Let's just go live here. Okay. We are having trouble getting into the Facebook group again, even though I tested it ahead of time. So Molly and Hillary, I do apologize. If you could please drop the links for LinkedIn and YouTube here. I don't really understand why it's giving me trouble again, but it is. So let's just see. I will try and create a live video event. Again, I'll just join the Facebook Live here and see if we can get this going. Okay. Just give me 1 second. This would be great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone, for your patience. Again, if you're joining us today, if you could please drop in where you're joining from and your niche, that would be amazing. Okay, terrific. Here we go. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, the event is not working in our Facebook group again. I guess. So sorry, everyone. Okay, so Hillary and Molly, thank you so much. Molly, could you please communicate with Hillary, make sure that we can get our Facebook group, the link in there. It's not working in our Facebook group for some reason. So thank you so much. All right, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to come to hello here again. Hi, everyone. I'm Janie Petrucci. I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist. I am the founder of Living Plate RX. We are a nutrition content and digital meal planning platform for healthcare and wellness professionals. We have 2 tracks. We have one for registered dietitians and credentialed healthcare professionals, and we also have resources for wellness professionals as well. And today we are going to be focusing on behavior change strategies. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on the theory. I'm just going to do like a brief introduction for that. But overall, we're going to cover strategies and really focus in on the tools. Like, what are the tools that you can use in your practice? You can do this with one-on-one counseling and also groups. So I'm going to share with you, again, these tools that you can use in really a variety of situations in your practice to support clients and patients with behavior change. So we did poll our Facebook group and ask them which questions they had, what questions they had most about really behavior change strategies and tools. And I'm just going to go through those questions with you today, and I am going to be answering those. Before we do that, I just didn't want to miss mentioning this to you. We had an unbelievable event last week with Vitamix, our partner Vitamix. It was really terrific, very energizing. If you missed that, make sure you catch the replay. Our members, the replay is in your library. Molly and Hillary, if you could drop the link for people to register for that, you can watch the recording as well if you register. And then we're doing a follow-up for that event. The Vitamix event really just shares with you, how do you do a live or recorded culinary event to provide education, which is also a strategy for changing behavior. So we'll talk about that a little bit today too. We're going to be doing a follow-up event on 8/12, and that's going to be a Q&A very much like this one. And then we're also going to be doing one on 8/21, which is for members only. That is going to be a live Zoom call where we're going to do a deep dive into how you do a culinary event, really a live cooking demo for your community. All right, let's dive into some behavior change. I'm going to pull up, I'm going to share my screen here. And we're just going to cover briefly behavior change because I'm going to be talking a lot about it today when we're addressing the strategies and tools. So I use most frequently the stages of change. A really simple model takes something that's quite complicated and really simplifies it. I want you to understand that the presentation here of the stages of change is a continuum. It doesn't just run one way, right? Your patients and your clients don't start in pre-contemplation and end up in maintenance. And so often I think that is one of the mistakes that people make. It's like, okay, let's change your behavior and then it'll stick, right? Well, that's not typically how it works. Depending on what stage people come to you in, let's say they come to you in stage of contemplation, it's going to take some motivation and action before they get to maintenance. And then even when they get to maintenance, they sometimes will revert back to having to be remotivated or things change, right? So if you take a look at the stages of change model here, across the bottom, you have pre-contemplation, contemplation, motivation, action, and maintenance. And the pre-contemplation is really, people who aren't thinking about making change, typically not your ideal customer avatar. Some of those people might come to you, through a doctor's referral, or maybe even they saw something on social media that sparked their interest and then they moved to contemplation. But pre-contemplation, they're not really even thinking about making the change. Contemplation is where they're thinking about making a change, but potentially they are not even problem or solution aware. They don't know that they have, maybe they're thinking they have a problem. Something's not quite right with my digestion. Maybe it's my hormones. I'm not really sure. But the contemplation is the point in behavior change where they're starting to think about making a change. Motivation is where they are motivated to start making a change. Most of the time, people who are motivated to make a change are already problem aware, but they might not be aware that you can help them with a solution. When somebody comes to you in action phase, they're ready to go, right? So motivation to action, we're going to talk about strategies for getting people from motivation to action today. Once somebody is in action phase, they're ready for your support. They're ready for the counseling. They're ready for the resources, and they're ready to take action to getting a better health outcome. And then maintenance is where they've achieved, and it's not always like the ultimate goal, right? But maybe they've achieved one goal and they've changed one behavior and it's stuck. Fantastic. Let's go back to action and attack another one. It is, often people will come to you with comorbidities or different things that they need to address. It's usually not just one problem. It's usually a set of problems. So you can think of the stages of change as kind of an overall, structure for behavior change, moving people along the continuum. But, you can also look at it kind of on a goal and, singular behavior too. So it can be a tool for that as well. Where it's just one goal. They're motivated to make this one change. They take action. It sticks. Great. Let's move on to the next one. The reason I'm showing this slide to you is also to illustrate the stages of change, but to remind you that using behavior change strategies can drive your marketing efforts as well. Typically for pre-contemplation and contemplation, those are the clients that you're working on attraction. You have to spend a good amount of your effort attracting them. And then once they move through motivation, action, and maintenance, you spend more time really focusing on client success and retention. So I just wanted to throw that in there. We're not talking about that today, but we are going to be focusing on kind of the lower half here. So if anybody has questions about behavior change, please go ahead and drop that here. Molly and Hillary, thank you so much for supporting us. Okay, so let me just advance the slide here. We'll move forward. We're going to start answering the questions now. I'm going to actually put the two questions here because we are going to be able to address both of them with this next exercise and this next tool. So number one question was, how do you approach clients who say they want to change? So somebody who's clearly motivated, but they really struggle with following through. So that's number one. Number two is, how do you know if a client is actually ready for change, or maybe they're just telling you things that they want you to hear? So how do you deal with that? So both questions are going to be answered during this following exercise. But first, I want you to, let me just come to hello for a second. I don't need to have this slide up the whole time. Great, sorry. Okay, let's just come to hello. There we go. All right. So we're going to be answering those two questions with this following exercise. And but I want you to ask yourself the question first, like, why don't clients follow through? And not, honestly, the possible reasons, there are many, but not one of them is that they lack the willpower or they lack motivation most of the time. Most of the time, it's barriers are not being considered. And they're not being addressed by the practitioner. So a lot of these things that I'm going to be talking about are modifiable by you, the practitioner. So barriers are not considered and addressed. So we're going to do an exercise that will help you reveal very simply, but very accurately reveal barriers that people struggle with. Number two, their confidence level is not addressed. You need to be able to measure someone's confidence on meeting a SMART goal. If a goal is presented to them and they're like, oh yeah, I can do that, but you don't assess their confidence in getting it done, you're not going to be supporting them as fully as you possibly can. Number three, goals are not SMART goals, and therefore people will frequently experience what they call failure, right? So they've set a goal and it was a lofty goal and it was probably not reasonable for them and they weren't able to meet it. And then they failed at it. And then they just keep like trying again and again and again. And that's kind of a shortfall. And that's why people sometimes can't change their behavior, because the goals being set just are not reasonable. Too many goals. Number four, too many goals are being set, or they're just not being broken down. I often talk about scaffolding behavior change. So, having someone tackle small goals at a time. If somebody lacks culinary confidence, if they have no confidence in the kitchen, giving them a meal plan that is built out even for 3 days is too much. It's too much to expect, and they will experience failure. So what is a small win that they can have? Maybe it's making overnight oats or overnight chia pudding. Try and make once, make enough for leftovers. So make it once and eat it twice, and do that twice over the next 2 weeks. Maybe that is reasonable. But even then, if you're going to be setting kind of a lower skills goal, still always assess their confidence. And we're going to show you a very simple tool that you can use to do that. And then number five, the wrong resources are being provided. So if you're going to go through all of the work that we're going to be showing you today, it's actually not a lot of work, it's pretty simple. But if you're going to go through the work and use and leverage behavior change strategies, and you're going to be using these tools to identify where your clients are really struggling, you need to be able to point to the resources that they need. And again, I'm going to probably mention meal plans quite frequently today, because often we're told as practitioners, give them a meal plan, right? Meal plans are not going to solve anybody's problem alone, right? Meal plans are great. They're an awesome resource. They can be an awesome space to have a conversation around food with your clients, great teaching space, but they're not going to solve a problem in and of themselves. So, and sometimes they can even drive somebody to failure, right? If they're just given too much. So give me a raising hand emoji if you agree with that. I think a lot of us feel like we have like this struggle in our minds all the time about meal plans, because people come in asking for them. But at the end of the day, sometimes it's not the best solution for them at that point in time. So you have to identify resources that are appropriate for that client, for that patient, and that you're delivering them at the right time. All right, so I'm going to share my screen again, and we're going to take a dive into some of these tools that I want to share with you today. So here we go. Perfect. All right, we good, Molly? Can everybody see my screen? All right, we are going to advance the slide here. Here we go. So this is the process I'm going to be taking you through today and using some tools. First is going to be identifying the transformation behaviors. What are those behaviors that your clients, your patients need to engage in to get a positive health outcome? It's behaviors, and almost always it is going to be intake related. We are nutrition professionals. So for those of you joining us on LinkedIn and YouTube, in the Facebook group, they're very well aware of the community that we serve. But we serve primarily nutrition professionals and those who use food as medicine. So if you are a food as medicine practitioner, if you are a nutrition professional, if you create new care plans that have a nutrition component, you are almost always, that component is almost always going to focus on intake, right? Either excessive intake or inadequate intake, right? They either need to eat more of this or eat less of that. And so when we talk about behaviors, that's what we're talking about here. Okay, number 2 here, I'm just going to expand this field here a little bit. What behaviors? So asking yourself the question. Sorry, I'm talking fast because this is exciting stuff. What behaviors does your ideal customer avatar need to adopt? What do they need to adopt and kind of maintain? What habits do they need to maintain to get the transformation that you're promising? So thinking about they're coming to you to get a transformation, right? Maybe it's to control their blood sugars. Maybe it's to reverse type 2 diabetes. If that is the ultimate transformation, like controlling blood sugars is not a behavior. So what are the behaviors that they need to engage in to reverse their type 2 diabetes, to have better control of their blood sugar? Right? And it can be a lot of different things, but maybe it is increased intake of fruits and vegetables, or decreased intake of highly processed foods, increased intake of low glycemic index vegetables. It could be a lot of different things, but as much as possible, you must focus on the intake because it makes it a lot easier to use behavior change, to select the tools the resources that you're going to be providing them. So what behaviors does your ideal customer avatar need to adopt to get the transformation you're promising? And this is the exercise that we're going to go through. I love going through this, not only with colleagues like you all here today, but also with patients. So I had in my counseling room, when I was practicing, I had a whiteboard, and this whiteboard had what you're looking at right now on it permanently. So it was permanently written on the whiteboard, and then we'd fill it in. We're going to fill it in together. So I'm going to be asking you all for some feedback today. I'm going to ask you to answer some questions here and pretend like you're your ideal customer avatar. So this is decisional balance. It is behavior change. It's part of behavior change theory, and it is a strategy and a tool that you can use to not only identify barriers, but to identify the services that you're going to provide that are going to get people through motivation and into action. So it's going to all kind of come together here. So this is a very practical tool. It's theoretical, but it's also very, very practical. So we're going to start in the upper left-hand corner. First, let's identify what the behavior is. I think the behavior that I selected was, yes, here we go. Increased consumption of vegetables. Pretty basic, but you can get a little bit more specific. It should be related to your patient or your client's primary diagnosis. So you've done an assessment on your client or patient, and you've arrived at a nutrition-related diagnosis. So it needs to be related to that to be super relevant to them. So the behavior that we're going to be focusing on, increased consumption of vegetables. Now, as the client, I want you to think about the positives and the negatives of not making the change. And we're going to go through this whole thing, right? So the positives of not making the change, because there are positives to not making the change, and they need to explore that. It's a really good exercise for them to understand that there are actually positive things as a result of just not making this change. So if you don't make this change, what are the positives? And here are some of them. I'd love for you to drop anything that you might think is relevant here. So a positive of not making the change. A positive could be, I'm going to be able to eat the same things. And you are going through this process with them, makes you a super empathetic practitioner. You're really listening to them and acknowledging that, there are going to be positives to not making this change. It's not going to be easy. So eat the same things. They can maintain the same habits. I can just do what I continue doing, right? I don't have to cook. Maybe your client doesn't like to cook. I can save time and I can save money. Time and money has always been a recurring theme when I take either individual clients through this or groups. You could do this in a group setting too. What's super fun and super interesting when you take a group through this is that they feed off of each other, right? It really creates some nice repertoire with the people in your group. And the list just goes on and on, right? So I usually stop it at about 4 or 5, but I ask people from the group to please contribute. What are the positives for them for not making this change? So now we're going to move on to the negatives of not making this change. Now, this is an area that can be difficult space for some people to explore, especially if they've received a diagnosis of a chronic disease. So you have to be gentle here, but I think it's worth exploring with them. So what are the negatives of not making the change? I'm either going to get sick or continue to get sicker. I'm going to increase my health risk. And again, this is going to be probably more focused on their particular diagnosis. These are really general. So get sick, increased health risk. So whatever the health risk might be. So a negative of somebody who's trying to reverse their type 2 diabetes is that I'm going to have to go on medication, right? That is a negative of not making this change. And again, important for them to explore. I'm going to have to go on medication. I don't want to do that. So, and I'm going to increase my risk of heart disease. There are a lot of things that can fill this square. I'm not going to feel great. I'm going to continue to feel lousy. And my lifespan might be shortened as a result of not making this change. Now we're going to move on to the negatives of actually making the change, because there are negatives of changing their behaviors. They include eating different food. I have to develop new habits. This is usually like off the board, by the way. If I'm in a group setting, like when we are doing employee wellness programs, I just kept writing because there were, and these are all barriers, by the way. So you need to pay attention, but people have a lot of feelings and a lot of emotion about this particular square of decisional balance. So the negatives of making the change. I need to eat different food. I have to develop new habits, which is always a drag. I need to learn how to cook. I don't like to cook, and now I'm going to have to learn how to cook. And, some of the things in here too might be perceived negatives, and potentially they might not be negatives, but it's important to explore, their perceived negatives as well. It's going to take me more time. It's going to cost me more money. Again, time and money are always going to come up. And again, I just don't like cooking. So that's really going to be a negative. And potentially I have to change my behavior. And that's going to be really hard for me. And this particular block, these are all the barriers. Boom, 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 boom. These are all the things that you need as the practitioner to address if your client is going to be able to take action. If you don't address the barriers, and I often say as nutrition professionals, we are barrier busters. We are barrier busters. If we cannot break down these barriers, our clients are not going to, they're going to experience friction with taking action. So in terms of answering those questions that our group was asking us when we polled them, like, why don't people make change? They say they want to make change, but they're not making the change. A lot of times it's because their barriers weren't explored deeply and we didn't provide the resources to bust those barriers down. You want to reduce the amount of friction that somebody is going to experience when they're trying to change their behavior. That's how you get success. So if there's a big secret or a big takeaway today, that's going to be the biggest one for you. So you take all of these barriers and then you put together an intervention. Right now, I'm talking about your medical nutrition therapy, your ADIME for my dietitians out there. You're assessing, you're diagnosing, and now you're building an intervention. What is the intervention? The intervention is going to be content to address all of these right here, right? So once you do that, then this is the happy place, right? So if I can support you as your practitioner with addressing all of these negatives, then you're going to be able to move to this happy place, and motivation and action will become a lot easier. You're going to have improved health, reduced disease risk. You're going to feel better, potentially live longer. And that, you're going to get that from them because it needs to be their perceived positives of making the change, right? So ask them that question. Any questions on going through this? All good? All right. So we've identified the transformation behaviors, right? So we have them here. These are our transformation behaviors. So what do you need to do next, right? So you've identified not the transformation behaviors. We've identified the barriers. So then what comes next? And this addresses the next question that we got from our group, which was, the challenge of putting together an intervention, right? How do I build together an evidence-based intervention that really targets, it's super personalized to my client's experience with behavior change. So first step, you use the decisional balance tool, right? Uncover their barriers. And honestly, it becomes really simple. The next step, look at the barriers and point to content that you can give them. So we're going to focus on increased intake of vegetables, just because it's simple. But I also added increased intake of fiber, which is very common, and then decreased intake of processed foods. So those three are really common behaviors that we want people to engage in. And a lot of the times, like, you'll attack one behavior with another. So for example, if my client increases their intake of vegetables, naturally they're going to increase their intake of fiber. But it still is worth writing down, because potentially you need to provide some education around fiber. So not just fruits, vegetables, and whole grains, like really diving deeper with your clients and providing them with some resources that can instruct them on what fiber is. So providing them some additional support here. So here's a formula that you use. So we have our behaviors, we have our barriers, right? Let's just back this up, because I want you to see. Here's the behavior, right up here. And then here are our barriers down here. I think it's interesting for you to note right now, by the way, that if you go across this grid, they are inversely related. Eat the same things, eat different food. Maintain same habits, change habits. So that's an interesting thing to note. Just wanted to share that with you. So their behavior: increased consumption of vegetables and fiber, decrease or increase in intake of processed foods. Those are the behaviors. And then here are the barriers that surround all of that, right? They lack cooking confidence. They lack food knowledge. Time is an issue. Cost is an issue. They don't like cooking. Just list them. And then you pick the content. So the first, when you're building your set of resources and constructing your intervention, you're going to want to provide a variety of learning modalities. For example, videos, handouts, potentially meal plans, recipes. Again, it's not just about the meal plans, right? You're not going to change anybody's behavior or knock down barriers by just providing a meal plan. You have to go deeper than that. You have to explore all of their barriers, and then each barrier you map out to content. So for example, this is some, just types of content, not specific content. How-to content, quick win, right? 6 ways to prepare butternut squash, for example. So if I'm counseling somebody on increasing their intake of vegetables and increasing the intake of fiber, then butternut squash might be on the list. They liked it. They give me indication in their assessment that they like butternut squash. I'm going to give them a handout, right? Quick win. Here are 6 things to do with butternut squash. Here are 6 things to do with chia seeds, right? Or here's the anatomy of how to make a chia pudding. So how-to content where they can get a quick win. Checklist is like easy application, like giving them a pantry list, a kitchen environment list. That could be really helpful. That will address the lack of food knowledge, right? What foods do I need to keep in my environment that are going to support me with changing my behavior? Because if you do all of this work and then your client goes back to an environment that is not supportive of their behavior change, it's going to be very difficult. Again, you're trying to reduce the friction as much as possible so that they can experience success. So checklist gives them an easy application of knowledge, and pantry list, kitchen environment is a good example of that. And then, saving time, cost, giving them handouts that address that, like, 5 quick ways to make oatmeal is a good example. That's also kind of a how-to as well. Handouts can be knowledge driven to support them with lack of food knowledge as well. So in our library, we have many different handouts on fiber, on type 2 diabetes, on low glycemic index foods. Just, pick a few that you want to provide them as part of that intervention. And that can help support their knowledge. Now, knowledge alone isn't going to change behavior, but it is a mediator of behavior change. So it is a strategy that needs to be used, right? So you need to increase their knowledge somehow. And handouts are a really great way to do that. And then ebook guides can help them address a lot of, ebooks go a little bit more in depth. So for example, if reducing their intake of processed foods, for example, is something that you want to support them with, then you can give them an ebook that addresses, how do you leverage store-bought foods to prepare healthier food, healthier recipes for yourself. So, explore in our library, we have many different ebooks that you can provide to your clients, but, pick one, maybe two, that can help them with overcoming some of the barriers here. So it could be cooking confidence. It could be time. Could be cost. Like if it's time, it may be the ebook for Trader Joe's. We have a Trader Joe's ebook that will address both time and cost for somebody. And then if they don't like cooking, you could give them the Guide to Eating Out. That's a really great ebook, which is a extensive ebook that walks them through how do you read a menu and how do you select, better options for takeout. So being really personalized here, this allows you to deliver really personalized care. All right, let me just go back here. We're just going to show you here. Oh, sorry, we did that. Okay, so this was one of those simple tools. I used it every single time I was in the counseling room, and I used it multiple times. This confidence scale is just a visual, right? 1 to 10, and you're going to be asking someone the question. So once goals are set based on, the barriers that you're trying to break down and considering the behavior that you're asking them to engage in. So we'll just pick one. So increase intake of vegetables. The goal might be, I'm going to make a butternut squash soup. Okay, that sounds like a great goal. On a scale of 1 to 10, and you show them the scale, right? You take this scale, I cut it out and laminated it. It was in my counseling room, and I would hold it up for them. And it just, again, so simple, but it was really effective to make them think about, all right, where am I here? So on a scale of 1 to 10, what is your confidence level that you can make the butternut squash soup? Show them the recipe on the meal plan. This butternut squash soup this week, confidence. Okay, well, if they answer a 9 or a 10, it is more likely that that patient, that client, is going to be successful at changing their behavior. Okay, they're going to be able to increase their intake of vegetables because they can make that soup, which is loaded with vegetables. 9, 10. If they said, oh, I don't know, 6, okay, the next question you ask is why a 6 and not a 10? Why a 6 and not a 10? Well, I don't know if my family's going to like the butternut squash, or I don't know that I really have time this week. So you can see how this is going to work. I'm not going to be pushing the butternut squash soup any longer. If somebody says their confidence is anything below a 6 or below, that is not a good goal for that patient or that client. Revisit something else. Maybe the answer is that they purchase soup from the store, right? Maybe a lower sodium option that you have given to them. Maybe that's going to be better for them. Or maybe they don't make a soup. Maybe they just roast the butternut squash. Okay, patient A, on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you that you can purchase pre-cut butternut squash, because cutting butternut squash can be a barrier sometimes. Purchase pre-cut or frozen and roast it for dinner and lunch the next day. How confident are you on the scale? Oh, I can do that, 9 or 10. Perfect. So you can see how this confidence scale can be used as a practical tool to walk people, get people to their SMART goal, essentially, because that's what we're doing, right? A SMART goal is only going to work if you follow the rules, right? It has to be reasonable for them to achieve. And you will only know that if you ask the question. So you have to be very specific, not, how confident are you that you can, do everything that we've talked about? Like that's not how you use this scale. This scale is intended for this scaffolded behavior change, where you're asking them on this scale how confident they are with achieving that goal. And a lot of the time, it's going to be, they're preparing their food or they're purchasing food for themselves, right? So, how confident are you that you can purchase raw, unsalted walnuts this week and use it as a topping for your oatmeal? For most people, that's going to be a 9 or a 10, right? Unless they can't access, food access is an issue, then it might be a 5 or a 6 and you have to visit something else, right? But sometimes it can be as simple as that. It doesn't have to be this big, grand, goal where they have to cook in the kitchen, right? It could just be simply purchasing some things. All right. And how are you feeling about the confidence scale? Give me a thumbs up or a clapping hand emoji if the confidence scale is something that you think that you can use in your practice. I encourage you to print this out. So for our members who have access to the library, the confidence scale is in there. If you're not a member, you can create this simply yourself in Canva, and then print it and laminate it. Make it pretty big and just hold it up. And even if you're in like a Zoom session like we are now, you could pull it up on a slide like this, or you could even hold it up, right? And then what's also very cool about the confidence scale is that it gives you data. You can't change what you can't measure. You must change somebody's confidence unless they come in at a 9 or a 10 with everything, which never happened in my practice. With the many people that I saw, there were always people who had various positions on this scale. You want to document that. Okay, patient came in, on a scale of 1 to 10, 6 for making the butternut squash soup. Maybe by week 8 of working with you, they have gotten up on that confidence scale, right? You're getting more 9s and 10s than you are 4s and 6s. So that is super valuable data for you to collect. So use it as a tool for your patient, identify the goal, but then also document it for yourself because it will help you measure someone's behavior change. Okay, this is the SMART Goals map. Here's another tool that is going to support you with, and I'm moving on to tools that work best in your practice. So that was question number 4, just kind of sliding right through everything here. I've showed you a bunch of tools already, but this is another one. It is a SMART Goals map. It can be used as a handout. It can be used as a fillable PDF. You could even have someone fill it out when they're in the counseling session with you. When I would do group programming, I would print these out. I actually didn't collect them. I would just have people fill them out to identify goals for themselves. So you don't have to collect them if you don't want to, but you can if you want to, or you can fill it out with the patient. Just walk them through it. So share with them, what a SMART goal is. This is, again, one of the areas where, people experience failure because a SMART goal wasn't set and the practitioner didn't walk them through setting the SMART goal. And a lot of the times, they're like super motivated, like, yes, I want to make 5 dinners a week and I'm going to go to the gym 5 times a week. We have those clients who come in who are super motivated. It's your job to kind of reel it back in and say, okay, let's, again, scaffolded care. Let's start with some simple SMART goals. They should be specific. That's what it stands for, right? Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. The goals have to meet all of those criteria. So setting goals that are, again, specific to the outcome that they're looking for, write them down and provide targeted dates. Again, more data for you, right? You're collecting more data that will validate the care that you're giving, right? The idea is to move people along behavior change. So you need to document that. This is another really great way to do that. So the SMART Goals map for our members, it is in the library. So you can just go there, you can brand it and download it for yourself to use in practice. If you use an EHR, you can distribute as a PDF, but you could also upload this as a form. So you could use these different, the goals that I'm showing you here, kind of the goal space and the target dates, and you can just create a form that your client can fill out online in their EHR. So again, could be pen to paper, could be verbal, and then it could be a form in your EHR. Now, setting goals only works if you follow up on them. Right? So now your client has gone through your behavior, your decisional balance, you've identified the barriers, you're building your intervention to address those barriers. They've shared with you their confidence with their goals. They've now set the goals. And now you have to follow up to see if they've met those goals. It's very, very specific. So the next time the goal achievement survey happens, after the first time you see a client. So you're going to see your client and your patient, they're going to set the goals. And then every single time after that, session 2 through 1,000, you're going to have a goal achievement survey. So set the goal and then follow up. Did I meet my SMART goal from the last session? Right? This is how people are moving along behavior change. I set the goal. Did I make it? Did I achieve it? Yes. Fantastic. Let's go back, pick another barrier and address that, set a goal and just pick another one, right? But if I didn't meet the goal. Like, let's say I thought that I could make the butternut squash soup. And I've got butternut squash soup on my mind today. I think maybe I'll make a batch while I'm here and serve it cold. Cold butternut squash soup is really delicious in the summer. So let's say that somebody said they were going to make the butternut squash soup. They were really motivated and they wanted to make it, but they made it and it didn't turn out, or nobody ate it, or maybe they just really struggled with it. So, or they just never made it. So no, I didn't meet my goal. Okay, why? Why didn't you meet your goal? Guess what? More barriers are going to appear. So you're going to document those barriers and just start. Remember, I told you right from the beginning, this is a continuum. So, they get to maintenance, they set their goals, and then we come back, right? And just typically revisiting that action phase again and creating another goal. If the butternut squash soup was too much, maybe you just roast the butternut squash and just enjoy it as a side dish or in a bowl. I would say that the goal achievement survey, it's a great tool for individual counseling, but it's an exceptionally powerful tool in a group setting, because you can leverage like motivational interviewing. You, the practitioner, you don't have to answer any of the questions. You can ask other people in the group. So let's say Mary didn't meet her goal. She was going to make the butternut squash soup. She just never got to it. She either couldn't find the squash or she just didn't have the time. You can ask the group, does anybody here have recommendations for Mary so that she can reevaluate her goal and just see what they come up with? It's really amazing the way that this goal achievement survey can work in a group setting. Really helps with rapport, really great for engagement. This goal achievement survey is also in your library for our members. So you can just go in there, download it. Again, fillable PDF. You can do it verbally with people, or you can copy this basically and create a form in your EHR. So evaluate the SMART goals from the last session. If you didn't meet them, why didn't you meet them, right? I'll give you another kind of a simple example. This was actually one that I heard frequently enough that I came up with a solution for my patients. Some patients they enjoyed nuts, right? And very often they were eating roasted salted nuts and they were eating a lot more than they should have. Like, they didn't realize, like, what is a serving size? And when I showed them, they're like, wow, okay, so maybe we need to change course here, right? So let's say they needed to be on a low sodium diet. I would often recommend raw walnuts. Love raw walnuts for their omega-3 content, addressing inflammation. Here's a serving size. Clients would purchase the raw walnuts, and then they'd come back and they're like, oh, I bought the walnuts, so I met my goal, but I really had a hard time eating them. They were really bitter. I just didn't like them compared to the roasted and salted kind. So my solution was soak them. It'll make them sweet. Okay. So they met the goal, right? But it wasn't going to stick as a behavior because they didn't really enjoy it. So we went back to action phase to say, okay, take those walnuts that you purchased, soak them overnight or soak them in warm water for 10 minutes, and it's going to reduce the bitterness and perhaps you'll enjoy them more. And sure enough, they'd come back like, that was amazing. Yes, I'm even adding them to my smoothies, or I'm having them on top of my salads because it's a little bit more palatable for me. So, it doesn't always have to be like dichotomous, like, yes, I met the goal, or no, I didn't meet the goal. Maybe they met the goal, but it's like wasn't the best experience. So in order to provide personalized care, you are going to need to address that. All right, here's an example of just one, and actually I can screen share. I can take you inside of, I think I can, yes, I can. I'll take you inside the library for a little bit to show you kind of some more resources that would be appropriate for addressing certain barriers. This is a multi-page handout, sustainable habits for long-term use while on GLP-1 medications, right? So we're supporting them with a method. We're supporting them with knowledge on consistent mealtime. So this is really knowledge-based. Okay, hold on. Oops, let me go back here. Sorry. I advanced the slide too much. Here we go. Just going through a review here. Great. Okay, great. So this is a handout. This is knowledge-based. So it's knowledge-based, but it also is a how-to. It does give them some actions that they can take. But this is a really, really good resource for someone who might be either making the decision to be on GLP-1s, or somebody who is currently on it and might be struggling with that. I'm going to share this tab instead now, just to share with you again. We're going to be taking them through behavior change, identify the barriers, bust down those barriers with resources. Now, you can create all of those resources yourself, or you can dive into our library and select the white label resources. We have many resources for you, and they're different categories. So remember, I shared with you here, let's go back to here, right? The type of content. So think about the type of content that will address the barriers, and then you can go into your library or you can create it there first. You want to start with, is it a handout? So here are handouts, right? So I'm going to go to handouts and I'm going to find some things there for my client. Or maybe it's a cooking video. Remember, mixing up the modalities could be really important for supporting your clients with behavior change, right? So if they like takeout, but we need to reduce their intake of kind of that high processed, high sodium takeout food, maybe the chicken egg roll in a bowl could be something that they'd like, or the beef and broccoli. So there's a lot of really good resources here for you to address the barriers that your clients, let's see here, that your clients are experiencing. So always, before you select, I'm just going to come to hello here now. Great. Before you select your content, before you build your intervention, please go through the behavior change strategies that we shared with you today. You're going to start with the decisional balance exercise. That is a tool that you can use in practice. Then you're also going to be using your confidence scale, your SMART goals, your goal achievement survey, and it really just covers the whole continuum of behavior change. These are not, that's not an exhaustive list of tools. There are other tools in our library that you can leverage to support people with behavior change, but this is really kind of the basics, kind of basic framework. So again, the biggest takeaway today is before you issue any content, provide any recipes, give anybody a meal plan, make sure, number one, you assess and diagnose your clients first, then that you build an intervention that really pays attention to where people are at on the behavior change scale and what barriers they are experiencing. And again, this framework should make it really easy, make it easier for you, because now you have the tools to kind of do that. Does anybody have any questions about the behavior change tools that we shared today? All right, so I did take you into the library. If you are not a Living Plate RX member yet, Hillary and Molly, could you please just drop the link for the demo call? I did give you a quick sneak peek at our library. I didn't even go into the digital meal planner today, but if you'd like to take a deeper dive with me, schedule a demo call, please. It takes anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour, but I really show up to answer all of the questions that you have about the white labeled content, our drag and drop meal planning system. How do I edit the content? What are the rules around editing and using the content? I also take you through how to use the BioScreen dietary assessment tool that's already integrated into our meal planner. Just sign up for a demo call and I will show it to you kind of in action, which is always really helpful for people who might be interested in having the support with building these interventions that are based on solid evidence-based behavior change strategies. If you are watching this as a replay, and I, again, apologize to those of you in the Facebook group, we're going to be posting this recording. So when you watch it, please ask any questions, tag me. You can use the hashtag replay. That will just help us identify that you know, where your question is, like it points us to that comment and helps us support you with answering all of your questions. I would love to hear from everybody what behavior change strategy you're going to use this week. What of all of the tools that I shared with you, or just even a concept, are you going to be using this week? I really want to hear from you because we're cheering you on. We really want to make sure, not just cheering you on, but cheering on your clients and your patients too. We really want to make sure that you have the tools and the resources you need to provide evidence-based care, provide really dynamic resources, and we don't want you to burn out, which is why we support you with all of these tools. We also will support you with tech calls. So for our members, go into your library. There is a tech call section there in the Learn section, and you can listen to the tech calls there to support you again with using these resources. So start with behavior change, go through the tools that I shared with you today. And it's going to become really clear to you where you're going to, kind of where you're going to start. Kimberly is saying she loves the confidence scale, simple, but so effective. I promise you, like if that's the only thing you guys do today, like how simple is that, right? Create the scale, or if you're a member, download the scale and just use it with your next patient. It's remarkable how simple it is, but how powerful it is. And Kimberly, make sure you document that. Make sure you get that into your EHR and document where that client is at that point in time, and then use the confidence scale again for that same goal. It's really cool how it works. All right, Molly has just posted that she'd love for you to join us for the demo call. So please grab that link. We usually offer them once every 2 weeks, I think. We usually offer them twice per month. And we have a limit to the number of people we can have in a demo call because they are live and it is a Zoom room. So grab your seat, join us, and we'll chat. We can chat about behavior change. We can chat about the tools, and I'll take you on a tour. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. Friends in the Facebook group, I look forward to seeing you really soon. Take care. Bye.